Welcome back to Millennial Z and Boomer X. I am Boomer X,
And I'm Millennial Z.
and today we're talking about retaining employees during the big quit or great resignation. And how do you do that, really? I mean, practically, as opposed to the nonsense that I see written down by people who've never had employees and perhaps haven't been an employee. Many of them are contract writers for different journals, newspapers, or websites. And I see some things going out by different magazine journalists, and it seems like they think they have an idea, but they really don't know how to go about doing it. So us, it's different. I've been an employee, and a manager, and a business owner. You certainly have been an employee for different places.
Yep.
Uh, so we can offer, I think, more practical solutions.
hmm
And also, I want to address what they did right, and I'm going to use them. They all said it in different ways, of course, but many of them sounded similarly in the way they presented it. And one is I found on um, February 9th by shrm.org, which was an employer organizational group, and it offered 6 things on how to retain employees during Great Resignation. The first two: connect with staffers on a regular basis and listen to employees. Uh, that was the first two, which I found funny because if you're doing the first one, shouldn't you already be doing the second one? I mean, what's the
Right.
point of connecting with your employees if you're not listening to them? So connecting, they want you to stand up and just talk at them all the time. That's one of the reasons employees leave, I think.
hmm
As we mentioned in a previous podcast about the big quit and great resignation, when employees don't feel like they matter, they leave.
Yeah. It sounds like that article writer had to make 6 reasons and they squeezed out two from one.
Yeah, it almost sounds that way, but I think they were intelligent enough to understand that one doesn't necessarily mean the other. But
Yeah, but how do you connect without doing the other? You can't connect.
you're not honestly connecting, that's for sure.
Right.
You're just running at them,
Showing your face. Yeah.
right? You're just running,
Hey, I'm here. Anyway,
er,
going to the office.
telling them what to do as opposed to listening for their input. And we mentioned it before. If your employees are happy with the pay, and many are, but they leave anyway, that means there's something else. There's another reason they're leaving. And
hmm
that thing of no communication with their employees, if your employees feel like you're not approachable, or they can't talk to you, or you don't listen, and they can't explain what's wrong while they're trying to do the job that you hired them to do, their days there are numbered.
Right.
They're not going to stick around for very long. And that's a fundamental thing. I don't know why that's such a big idea, but to list it that way about connecting, and then number two, listen. So implying that you constantly connect them, but you don't always have to listen to them. And I'm
Right.
going to tell you that's the exact wrong attitude to have. You should listen to them every time, even if you know what they are telling you is repetitive or nonsensical. Listen to them. Treat them like they matter.
Yeah. Morning, John, Jimmy, Tim, Tom. It's Sean, sir. Oh, Sean, right.
Yeah, you know who you are.
Yeah,
I've actually heard that one,
of course.
and and that leads to the third one they list as show appreciation. Now, the biggest way you can show appreciation, I can hear people out there hollering already, pay me. That's why I have a job. And that's the
Right.
truth.
hmm
Pay them appropriately, especially if down the street they're paying them 10% more, and you're aware of it, they're aware of it, and you're getting warning signs that people aren't happy with the wage, but they rather stay where they are because they like working for you.
hmm
If they learn that they can earn 10 to 15% or more working for somebody else doing the same job,
hmm
that's okay. They're going to take it because
Yeah.
ultimately they're working for money. And that big of a differential, they're just going to have to go.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, to me, the biggest reason for leaving a job is the inconvenience of leaving a job to find another job. And and instead, if you have, you already have one in the pocket where people are going to be hiring you 10 to 15% more, it's still the change of pace, the change of habit is still inconvenient for a lot of people, that they would still be a little bit hesitant to do so. But I think in the end, if you just paid them, 10% to the compared to the 15% of the other job, they would most likely still stay with you instead
Right.
of the other job, just
If
because of the inconvenience
if
of
they're
leaving a job.
engaged and like you as a manager or business owner or supervisor, and they like their coworkers,
Hmm.
they're going to need a real incentive more than a 10% bump to leave
Yeah,
because they want to stay there. But when it starts to get 15 and 20%, as we spoke about in our last podcast about this, about the big quit or great resignation, at 20%, people leave.
yeah, pretty
It's just
understandable.
too much. Yeah, even if they love where they are, unless they're family or there's another emotional attachment that's greater than just I like my job and the people I work with. There has to be a real bond there to keep people at 20% pay differential.
Hmm.
But if there's no real bond there, if they're not engaged where they are, or they've been looking to leave because they're being treated poorly, coworkers are backstabbing, they're going to go at any price differential almost, or even a little less if they feel like they'll be treated
Yeah,
better.
yeah, that's for
And
sure. I definitely have seen that multiple times where people are like, I know I'm getting
right,
paid well here, but it ain't worth for the amount of work I'm doing, for the amount of stuff I'm
yeah,
taking from the upstairs people.
correct. And it's as simple as treating them like a person that matters. That's
Hmm.
simple rather than a drone or a robot that's there to do a job and get a check.
And it's not even that matters. Just treat them like a person
Well,
that's a
that's a,
person instead of a person that doesn't matter, is how
right.
they're
You
usually
you don't
treated.
even have to treat them like they're irreplaceable, so to speak.
Hmm.
Just treat them like they're a person,
Right.
a respected person, and you're glad to have them there doing the job, as opposed
Hmm.
to having to find another person and train to do the job. At that point, they become very valuable if they're actually doing the job. Which brings me to my personal peeve, and I know it's due to a lot of other people. If you have somebody that's been working for you for 5 years or more, and you're paying them an okay wage, and you know you could pay them more, but they seem to be happy with what they're being paid now, and you hire somebody new with no experience, good references, and you're paying them the same amount or more or close to the same amount as your 5 year employee that you truly are grateful to have, you are going to have a problem
Yeah.
every time, and you should.
Hmm.
That means you're overpaying the new hire,
Hmm.
or you are definitely underpaying the old veteran who's been helping you out and you owe some loyalty to. Something is wrong with you as an employer if that happens. And that will anger people quicker than many, many things, no matter how loyal they are, because they see that you are not loyal to them and not fair. If you're not
Yeah.
intrinsically fair, no matter how well you treat them, because like I said, bottom line, they're there to make money or they'd be doing something for themselves. Instead, they're doing something for you in exchange for a paycheck. And if they don't think you're loyal to them, they're not going to be around too much longer.
Yeah. I mean, I should be 101, but I'm sure
You
that
think
happens quite often
it
because.
happens much more often than people realize. And it truly will say you're paying one person, the veteran, $20 an hour,
Mhm.
and he's doing a great job or she's doing a great job. Been there for 5 years, started out at $14 an hour, and over a 5 year period worked up to $20 an hour. Then you bring this new hire in, and I know there's inflation and things have gone up, and you need to pay people more than your past starting wage of $14 an hour. But you pay this new person that the 5 year veteran or 5+ year, could be 10 year veteran, has to train them and they know nothing. And it doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter if that person you're hiring was your best friend since grade school or a family member. If you're starting them out at $19 an hour and they know nothing, and your 5 year veterans making $20 an hour,
Yeah.
they and everybody else is going to have an issue. And if you say, well, I told them not, nobody knows how much, they're going to find out.
Hmm.
They're going to find out how much they're getting paid. It's going to come out. No matter what you think, it's going to come out. They're going to tell each other some kind of way or hint out, or somebody's going to see a paycheck, or the payroll
Hmm.
person's going to let them know, or there's going to be an error. It's going to come out. And when that occurs, they're going to be righteously indignant.
Hmm. I think that becomes with the trying to make green of the bottom line all the time. They're like, well, we have this good worker, but I don't want to give them any more money because then it makes it look like we still have to raise their money. So the amount of surplus we have
Well, you
is lower at
should.
the end
It,
of the year.
if you really want to do it, you could, for example, pay that veteran an extra buck an hour. Pay him 21 if you feel the need to pay your new person 19. I'd say you need to pay them more, at least 22, because now they're training that person. They're doing two jobs as opposed to the one that they were hired to do. Now they're your trainer, unless that's what they are, a trainer, but I doubt it. Most of the time
Hmm.
they have multiple hats to wear. But give them a bump and tell them, I'm giving you a bump because I expect you to train this person. If they're a good employee, they'll take it very seriously, and you won't have any issues, even when they found out how much getting paid. And they'll be a little, wow, you're getting that much. Like, that's what they pay now. So, well, I just got it. You tell them, I just paid you extra money because I realized you weren't getting paid enough, and I wanted you to train this person. And while they may be a little disgruntled, they won't be outraged or indignant, and it'll go
Yeah,
away because you've shown that you care about them.
right. Yeah, you corrected your wrong, at least of
Are
some
you
sort.
in some sort of way?
Yeah.
Exactly right.
I
But
never
that
understood the thought that I feel like that policy alone of people not being able to talk about how much money they're making within the business is already
there's
a
no
bad
law
mark.
against it. In fact,
I know
there's a
just policy, like they just people don't want to
right.
talk
There's
about
a
it.
company policy, but states actually have laws about employers telling employees they can't discuss how much they get paid. The only time employers don't want to have employees tell each other how much they get paid is when they do things like that. They don't want
Hmm.
people outraged about
Exactly.
the differences in pay. If they were doing fairly, there wouldn't be an issue.
I think that's already brings a bad atmosphere into the work environment.
Yes,
That
in
that
every
alone.
way imaginable,
Hmm.
a bad atmosphere. And showing appreciation, like I said, paying them appropriately, and just treating them well. If you just do that, you don't necessarily have to have employee parties or vacations given
Right.
away at random events or any of that. You can do appreciation in many ways, bringing breakfast to people, paying for lunches, giving them a day off with pay, of course, or what that's not a real day off, right?
Hmm.
Uh, or anything else. And certainly that will help. All those things help. And if you do that, that will certainly make it easier. But two biggest thing is pay them appropriately, as fairly as you can, and treat them with respect, and you'll go a long way towards them. When I say respect, listening to their issues as well as giving them your orders, you know.
Hmm.
Of course, that's the big one. But those are two things, and everyone say, well, everybody says that. Yes, but everybody doesn't do it. They constantly think of ways to pretend like they're doing it while they're not actually doing it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, and that's where they run into issues. The last one is offer growth and opportunity, meaning give people the opportunity to advance and let them know they have the real opportunity. If somebody feels they're in a dead end job, it takes a really certain type of person to want to stay in one place at one job indefinitely. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, they're satisfied in that position, usually because they're doing other things, or they're doing that job because they're doing something else and that job serves a need and they have no desire to go forward. So they're happy staying there because that job is simply that job,
Hmm.
and their real passion lies somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's tough to find people like that. Most people aren't like that. You have to
I,
give them an avenue for growth.
I would argue there's a lot more than you think that are like that because I've met those people because I have had jobs where there's 40-year-old dude, he's been somewhere for 20 years making only, $17 an hour,
And he's happy
now.
doing it.
And he's happy doing it. And to me, I always try to figure out how these people tick, and the most common reason is they had a terrible past life. Like they had
Right.
they had prison issues, they had drug
Well,
issues, they
that's
had
exactly the kind of person that people don't want to usually hire, though.
yeah.
Funnily enough, if they do take a chance, and that's one thing I found, if you can identify people that have, for some reason, had a checkered past, not due to their own devices or due to a bad position or past life, and they're truly grateful for you to give them a new start,
Hmm.
and you can identify that, those people are usually more loyal than dogs.
Hmm.
They will never betray you. They'll be happy working for you forever. The
Yeah.
trick, though, is identifying the people who won't treat you badly as an employer, who will be
Hmm.
genuinely grateful and loyal because you're taking a chance on them.
Right.
And yeah, they're there, but they're hard to find. Um,
I just find it unfortunate that those people are still taken advantage of because that person never advances anywhere. They're not stupid. They could
well,
definitely do the
yeah,
job of the supervisor, and they've been longer there. They're longer than 20 years, but
yeah, unless they're well connected politically or some other way, people like that are usually treated pretty poorly for the
mhm,
rest of their lives, and it's a sad situation. I agree. But for most people, and those people are a small percentage, those are maybe like 5% of the people in total. For 95, 98% of the people, they want growth and opportunity. If it's not with you, it's going to be somewhere else.
yeah. I think my biggest one that I've seen people quit quite quickly on is the job or the business prioritizes the business more than people's personal issues when the time arises. Somebody has a family member that's having issues or something, and they have to leave
Right,
work for a week or so, and they just get rid of that person, even though he's been working there for 5 years, never missed a day. That makes
right.
no
That
sense.
that goes back to my respecting
Hmm.
employees, and that wasn't listed in that list,
Hmm.
which I found a bit surprising. But that falls under the umbrella of you're treating people as people and not
Hmm.
simply automatons. Now, of course, if you have people who abuse it, their grandmother's been in the hospital 5 times in
Yeah.
5 weeks, and there's no real issues going on. It's always something, and you have those people, and that's going to bring me to my next point. But it's not on that list. But it's my next point for other employers. Um, Sure, go look. Your grandmother's had issues, and it's always something different. She's not that old. Your grandmother's in her 50s, and there are no prior issues. I'm telling you, this can't continue. You've left us in the lurch. If you leave that, walk out that door now. I need you now. This is a we can make it up situation. I need you now. And if you're telling me I'm not forcing this on you, you're forcing this on me. We've talked about this before. This is not coming out of the blue. You've had this
Hmm.
discussion and they agree. Then sometimes you have to make the hard choice. But you're right. And if an emergency happens to someone, especially a loyal employee or a good employee or somebody that wouldn't lie or make up stories, and sometimes some people just have rough lives because they're in a family that has their kids are always in jail, their husband or their wife always has issues, they always have
Yeah.
some sicknesses, and some people just have terrible luck, and everybody knows of these people. And of course, you're going to pay them appropriately, and you can't rely on them that much. But if you treat these people poorly, of course they're going to leave. I
Yeah.
suspect that employers know this, and perhaps they want those people to leave because they're just too much trouble. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you this, the other employees are going to look at that. And if it's a good person you're doing that to, they know you're not loyal and they're going to start acting differently. I promise.
Oh yeah, definitely. They
And
start
that
looking around to see a better opportunity.
because they're going to know, well, I'm next because something may happen to me. I can't depend on these people.
Hmm.
And that's my point about one of the things about truly respecting your employees is loyalty goes both ways.
Hmm.
That I think has been lost in the United States, and it needs to be picked up again, and you'll see people stick around. Um, but what I was saying before about employees, and one I see employers don't do, get rid of the bad employee that all the other employees are aware of, and you won't for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That's a
Eh,
big one.
it's in every single
everywhere,
business I've been in. Every single one
everywhere. Everyone I've
has
seen
at
too.
least one or two bad apples. And
And
you're like,
everybody
how
knows
are
it.
you still hired? How are you still employed? It's
Everybody knows
insane.
it. And other people get fired for doing 1/10 of what the other people have done. And that makes it worse.
Yeah.
Get rid of the truly bad ones that everyone knows about.
Hmm.
That's half of your job. Not only just appreciating good employees, but pairing out the bad ones. And nobody wants to do that. Typically, it's because they're related to somebody that seems important and they want
Or
to,
they're
and it,
or they brown nose.
or they brown nose because you don't really know, but everybody else knows. And if you watch behavior around people, if it's someone that's been there for a couple of years and nobody talks to them but you as the owner or manager, and that person doesn't talk to anybody else but you as the owner or manager, there's a real problem. And
Right.
that's a very simple one to spot. And like you said, it's in every place you see, there's always one, and everybody else hates them.
Hmm.
And it's because typically they're being treated badly by that person.
Hmm.
They're claiming accolades that aren't theirs. They're claiming things because you don't know any better. You're talking to that one person. That one person's taking up all your time, and you're not connecting enough with the other employees to know differently. That's a big sign.
Yeah. Yeah. Either they're treating other people poorly and getting away with it, or they can obviously see the imbalance of treatment of the owner treating that person favorably comparatively to everybody else. That makes no sense.
Right. When that person is typically treating everyone else badly.
Mhm.
You know,
Or just lackadaisical with their work environment, or they
right.
just don't get things done as they
Right.
should.
Everybody else has to pull their weight, or the person's rude to them or lies about them to make himself or herself seem better to the other
Hmm.
person. Everybody knows who that is. I promise you, every place has it.
Hmm.
And if you're an employee, listen to this and you're thinking, well, my place doesn't have a person like that. It's probably you.
Hmm.
You just won't allow yourself to. Everybody knows who it is. Any place with more than 10 people, there's a person like that there.
Yeah, yeah, even less than that.
But certainly 10, at least
Hmm.
10 employees. If there's at least 10 employees, there's somebody like that there.
Yeah, it's riddled in family-owned businesses.
Right. And that's the relative thing I was speaking of. And you can't overcome that. But the thing is, the employer really needs to look out for that. And if you don't have the ability, for whatever reason, to terminate that employee, at least don't let them be in charge of anybody else. Make
Right.
them report directly to you, and don't allow them to supervise anybody else. Give them a task or a job that's very specific and has no authority over anyone else. And that'll make things much, much smoother. And that will allow your job, your business to work so much better. And the employees will thank you for it because they only have to deal with that person for a specific thing or task. And they don't have to take orders from that person who knows nothing because they
Hmm.
spend all their time, brown nosing with the boss or talking down other employees or spying on them when they don't know what's going on or making statements about things they know nothing about.
Yeah,
So don't put them in charge of anything,
that
simply
was
give them a job.
that was probably the biggest one was working in a family-owned business, and you know which one it was. In
Mm-hmm.
Hammond,
Mm-hmm.
was the daughter of the owner would constantly give her advice on things where she has no experience in the job at all, and she would constantly tell people how to do things, and we just have to sit there because she's the daughter's boss. We'd have to sit there and, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We'll get right on that. And then as soon as like that was the dumbest thing I could have ever thought to
Right.
do. That makes
Well,
no sense to what we do.
well, I see it from me where it was a government organization and it was a political hire, and the person was well educated. They were an attorney, but knew nothing. They were a failed attorney in two previous things and were moved to that political appointment from another political appointment where all they did was research. And prior to that, was in a title business, title insurance, which is nothing. The clerks do all the work, the secretaries do all the work. They just go over it and sign off on it. And knew nothing, but put him in charge of an entire office and started telling everybody what to do, but had no idea what to do in the first place other than a vague idea verbally given to them and had no reference, but immediately started making changes and didn't even really know what they were changing and was frustrated and angry that everybody was incompetent. But they were the incompetent ones because they didn't know what was actually going. They had no base or reference to go from.
Mhm.
But because of that connection, they were praised for making those changes that were long overdue. It's unbelievable. And the other people didn't know any better either because they had never done the job. So it can really get out of control there. And you'll have unhappy people guaranteed after that. And it would just continue. And the thing of it is, those people have been doing the job for quite some time. So they'll make it work regardless.
Right.
Regardless of anything that people in upper senior management do, they'll make it work because they're actually doing the job. That person's not doing the job. They're just changing the guidelines.
Hmm.
So they'll make it happen. But it could have been so much easier for everyone concerned. Just tweak it here, move things there, add something here, a little overtime, instead of wholesale changes and recommendations which they had no real idea about, or worse, they take it from something else they had done in the past and they're they forget they're actually regulating the industry that they were a part of as opposed to doing that industry, not a private concern. So it's pretty remarkable and everybody praises that person, but they have no clue really,
Hmm.
what's going on. I find that pretty funny. Not for the people involved, but the perception of the whole thing. The fifth one in that list that I mentioned earlier was encourage a corporate explorer mindset, which I find actually part of the problem. And you're looking like, what does that mean? Like
Yeah, incorporate.
corporate explorer
Oh,
mindset. And
corporate
that
explorer
that
mindset.
can be
Okay.
summed up, and I know people will argue with me. I looked up the context of what that meant and then several definitions. And that seems to be a cutesy way of saying a company man, somebody who's devoted to the company or willing to put the company first in some situations or understand that the company is a business and needs to be prioritized in their work. And that way they can understand their role. And what that's saying is promote the fact that the company needs to be adhered to and policies understood and adhered to. And the employees need to take a more company first attitude in their job.
That is
Yeah, that's old
the
school as
worst
can be.
advice.
But it's not the worst advice, um, only because without a business, nobody has a job. I think the
Sure.
way the way it's written, it's trying to downplay that as that's really what's going on. But that's really what's going on when they say that. Corporate explorer implies that learning about the company and how it works as a corporation or a business, but there's more to it than that. It's
I mean, that's a very specific type of occupation to be able to pull that off and have that as a forefront of your mindset to be able to do in your and make that a part of your culture because anybody with a skill set can just leave that business that's having that culture and go somewhere where they're more accepted.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's really a euphemism for be a company person.
Hmm.
It's written in a way to make it seem like it's not really that because it has horrible connotations. But that's really what they mean by that. And what they mean by that is placing the business forefront in your mind when you're working at all times, being loyal to the company. And truly, there does need to be a little bit of that because without the business, nobody's working.
Hmm.
The trick is it needs to go both ways. We're talking about retaining employees, and what they're saying is make your employees look at the greater purpose and as if they're a part of something larger than themselves so that they're more willing to stay. That's a touch of propaganda and brainwashing
Right.
brainwashing there. And that's
And
really they will say that's not what we meant, but that's exactly what you're doing. You can characterize it any way you want to, even as a corporate explorer. But
and they
but
could argue it the other way because people do need to understand that they are one part of the cog of the machine. And I get that it's a good idea to say, okay, I not only am I indispensable to keep that in mind, but also I don't need to do everything myself. There's other people to do their job. I think there's a
right.
lot of that good that comes with that mindset, but
Sure, that's what I'm saying. That's
mhm,
exactly what I'm saying. That it's a
there's
truly a
also
two-way street, and that
yeah,
But the part of that is nobody is insignificant. Let them know that. That's part of your engagement with your employees and retreating and treating them respectfully and as people, and let them know how well they're doing. But I would let them show them what they're doing and how it impacts the bottom line. I was all about, look, see what you did here? Look what happened because of what you did. It was
Mhm.
all your work. Without your work, this couldn't have happened. And that's really what helps that corporate explorer mindset. Let them know what impact they really have
Mhm.
in the grand scheme of things and show what they do really contributes.
Yeah, express gratitude might be a better way of
Nope,
saying that.
that's not what they mean. Promote corporate explorer mindset. And that's all about um, letting them know that the company is bigger than them. And
You know what's funny is my biggest pet peeve of jobs and going into new jobs and being wary of joining a new job is how many textbook coworkers do I have? How many people are going to do everything by the book, even though it is inefficient? It becomes inefficient. It becomes, to a point, becomes unsafe because it doesn't make any
right,
sense into the situation.
right. And that's a concern, but I'll tell you this, as a new person, you should be doing it by the book until you learn why they're doing it by the book. Because often things are done a specific way for a specific reason, and you don't know anything yet because you're new. So
I
once
could
you
argue either
understand,
way about that. I understand where you're coming from, and
right.
usually that is the usual mindset you should take because
Hmm.
right, you should learn how to do it right
In
before you start.
general,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Now, if something's obviously unsafe, that's a whole different story.
Hmm.
But I mean, in general, you're talking about making changes, and you have no idea why they do it this way in the first place. And
Right.
typically, it's because there's a bigger picture, and you're doing it a particular way contributes to the entire picture of what you're not aware yet.
Hmm.
But you will see it later. If you do
Hmm.
it differently, there'll be missing information or there'll be things done in a manner that's detrimental to the entire organization that you don't know about yet. But it'll come up later because you didn't do it the way they wanted you to do it. So
Right.
that's typically why it's done a particular way. And you'll find out over time, usually fairly quickly, like in the first few months or even that day if it's really bad. But usually in the first few months, you'll find out why.
Not to say that never happens, because that does
Hmm.
happen where I'm like, why do we do it this way? And then you,
Hmm.
oh, okay, that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
But to me, more often than not, it's unnecessary steps we're taking right now.
It seems that way. Lots of times it's legacy steps that are left over and people don't understand why they were there in the first place and they just stay there.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with asking questions unless you have a supervisor that's overworked and you're like constantly asking them questions and the supervisor says, look, I know you got a ton of questions, but please do us both a favor. In the first 2 weeks, just do everything the way I tell you because you don't know enough to even ask a right question.
Right.
And that's kind of how I am because I'll tell you why. I'm the same way. I'm a question asker, and I realize me asking questions making my job and theirs 10 times harder.
Hmm.
So I learned to just shut up for the first few weeks and just do it. Then, after everybody's comfortable and I'm contributing in a way that makes our jobs easier, I start asking questions. I
Right.
noticed this. I noticed that. Why do we do it this way when it seems that? Because I don't even know why things are done that way yet. So what am I asking about?
Hmm.
So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go about it. I'm just going on the aspect of when you are there for a while and you have a supervisor who doesn't even listen to any other
Yeah,
approach to the
that's a
situation.
real problem. That goes to that listening to your employees and respecting your employees in some way. There's nothing wrong with having a frank discussion with your employee who's a pain in the behind and thinks they know everything, and you tell them, look, man, I know you've been going after me about this, and I've been trying to ignore you or let it slide, but I'm going to tell you now we do it this way and give them the reason, respect them enough to tell them the full reason. And then you can say, and I don't want to hear about it anymore because unless something changes, this is the way it's going to continue. And you talking about it is just going to aggravate you, me, and everybody else. So why don't we let this drop? Unless you can come up with a better reason.
Hmm.
And then just that's it. You told them. You respect them enough to talk to them and tell them and let them know what's going on. Because honestly, they don't know. They have no idea how they're impacting you or what's going on. They're thinking this particular thing, and you need to let them know that what they're thinking is not correct and why.
Hmm.
But that's me.
Mm.
And sometimes they don't like it, but they typically will get over it, and they'll at least respect me for telling them that, rather than just ignoring them. Or as some places like, you know what? I don't want to hear it anymore, and turn around and walk off. Don't mention it again. And you never give them any explanation whatsoever,
Right.
which I've seen and I know you've seen too. That to
Hmm.
me is far worse.
Yeah. Yeah. The completely dismissive approach
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
definitely the worst one.
Unless they're intentionally aggravating you, you know, doing something, then you can, of course, you say what you need to let them know that what they're doing is not appreciated.
Hmm.
But the last one in that list of 6 is provide inspiration, and which is quite interesting. I find the best way you can do that is lead by example, if you're allowed to, depending upon how high you are up in the organization. Sometimes people above you will stop you from leading. They want to pretend like you're the leader, but they won't let you move out of their block they've set up. You are trapped in this small square, and you step outside that, and they will land upon you with the fury of 1,000 suns for
Hmm.
for thinking about doing something without their permission, or something outside of what they are aware of or what they have said grace over. And if that's the case, you're a little bit stuck. The only example you can have is to show how good you are at doing these repetitious things that they told you to do, or whatever particular thing they told you to do, and
Right.
let them know, hey, this is what we were hired to do. This is all we're hired to do. And this is what we need to do. Um,
Yeah, that's a rough spot to be in because
hmm
I know for a fact people just don't appreciate the unspoken guy that gets everything done. They just don't understand. They just don't acknowledge that person more often
they
than
don't
not.
even know it because you don't say anything.
Yeah, because it's not a problem because he's getting it done.
No, things get done. Yeah, and they're just
Hmm.
happy about it, right? The only way the smarter ones realize over time that we haven't had any issues over there. It's been real quiet over there because there are no problems. Typically, the only time you hear about a place is when there are real problems. If you're constantly hearing about one division or office, it's because there's problems over there.
Right. So the strategy is to be a little bit incompetent in the beginning, and then show improvement, and that'll get you in good graces.
That's a gamble that I don't recommend. Although I have seen some people execute that to
Hmm.
an excellent degree,
Yeah.
and come out smelling like a rose. But those
That,
people would have come out smelling like a rose anyway because they had somebody's attention to begin with.
right.
Um, so I would say, just be a good person, do your job.
Right.
That's it. And if the people in charge really know what's going on, they'll realize it.
Hmm.
You know, they will.
Yeah. It's far and few between where you find somebody who actually puts forth effort into their job. So
Now, I think
usually
more
they
people
it's
do
noticed.
it than want to admit it. But yesterday, in Fortune magazine, I believe that it said that only 3% of white collar workers want to return to the office full time. That means a full 86% plus of employees want to work from home at least 2 days a week. And the management consultancy Advanced Workplace Associates said after surveying nearly 10,000 people around the globe.
Well, that leaves an 11% difference of something else. They just don't want to be a white collar worker anymore.
Right. I mean, they have other people said no, they wouldn't mind coming back into the office,
Gotcha.
you know, but 86+% people said they'd rather do some sort of working from home at least 2 days a week. And some of them said they didn't want to come back at all. They just wanted, there's no reason why. We've been doing this for a year and a half, 2 years. Why do we need to disrupt this?
Hmm.
I'm saving time and money in the commute. You're getting everything you need.
Hmm.
So what's the problem? And
Yeah,
I'm
we're saving electricity in the office,
and
less
if
lights on,
yeah,
less air conditioning.
you don't need to rent as much space. You can sublet your offices out if you want. Um,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. Cut down on gas, cut down on attendance. You'll find a lot of people all of a sudden aren't calling in sick as often because they don't have issues at home. They have to coordinate with the job. They can just take care of it while they're working from home.
Yeah, need a meet up for face to face. We can go to a hotel. They got conference rooms there. Rent
Oh, you
that
can
room.
go to any place, like we're doing right now. That's
Right.
really how it was doing in a lot of places. So,
Yeah. If they wanted
uh,
people in person, flesh
right,
and blood right next to them, I suppose they could do that way.
right. Boardpanda.com has a thing that says a CEO tells employees go somewhere else if they want to work from home and they understood the assignment. Meaning, if you don't want to come back to work, you need to leave.
Right.
And funnily enough, in this particular article on Board Panda, many of those people were hired with the agreement that you'd never have to go into the office during the pandemic. Like we figured out a way that everybody could do their work. You don't have to worry about it. But some people are old school and insist they want behinds in chairs.
Yeah.
And if they're
It
not doing it, you find another job.
it really makes no sense to me. It truly makes no sense to me. If
That
they are getting the
is a
same amount
very
of
old mindset.
yeah, if they're getting the same amount of work done, what
My
does it
thing
matter?
is, that's the kind of person who believes that if they're not in the office, then they're not doing work, which is
You
an
can easily
absolutely false
right.
consideration.
You can easily track people and how much work they do now in
Yep.
most software programs.
It's yes, every keystroke programs that do, yes, there's no excuse for that in my mind. And if they're
Mhm.
doing that, they're going to find they have a very difficult time holding employees. And I'm sure that's contributing with that last statement we made about 86% plus of employees want to be able to work from home. And you have a CEO, and he's not the only one that says, come back or quit, essentially, then you're creating a situation. And I'm sure that is contributing to the Great Resignation because
Mhm.
people don't understand it and they realize this guy's just being a jerk. I don't want to work for somebody who's like that. And that's not what we agreed to when I was hired in the first place.
Right.
So, um, in fact, they're finding out that Goldman and Sachs Group parceled out nearly $500 million in special stock bonuses to its partners, and Citigroup paid out $3 billion more to its employees than it did in 2020. And that's all in an effort to keep employees to stay. Some companies can't get employees to stay even when they throw millions at them. And the reason why is their restrictive manner of employment.
Mhm.
And they're just tired of it. If you don't feel like you're being treated in a fair manner, whatever that is, if you don't feel like you're being treated in a fair manner, you're going to look for other employment. Or you realize, my job is just paper shuffling and purposeless money making, and it doesn't contribute to my life at all. I
Right.
want to do something else. And we talked about that in our last podcast too.
Mhm.
They just feel like they're just not doing anything with any real purpose or intent. And they're not going to put up with somebody treating them badly on top of it. If you feel hollow inside about your job and you're going to be treated badly, even if you're being paid very, very well, eventually you're going to leave.
Well, yeah, it goes back to the original point. The standard has changed, and people are now saying, well, I know I'm getting paid 10%, 15% more if I stay here, but the inconvenience of me having to commute to work, commute back from work is is more than I am willing to bargain for to take a 15%
Well,
cut for somebody that won't make me do that.
especially if it's completely unnecessary. And I think
Right.
that's what we're talking about, the fairness of it. It's like, what's unfair about wanting someone to come into the office? Well, they don't need to come into the office. Why are you making them come in just to suit your own fossilized mindset of how you
Mhm.
think work should be done? Which goes to respecting your employees. Be flexible. Say, why don't you want to come in? And they give you this list of reasons. Say, okay, if you can do the job from your house, I'm more than willing to let you, but I'm going to expect these things and I'm not going to tolerate any excuses. If you have internet problems on your end, that's your problem and you need to take care of it. immediately.
Right.
If your internet provider constantly goes down, I'm going to hold you accountable. And it goes, it's not my fault. It is your fault if you had the option to be in the office and you chose not to do it.
Yeah. And
You
that's
know,
pretty reasonable. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that, but if you have a known issue of your internet going out or
why didn't you
some type
fix
of
it?
connectivity issue,
Why
you
didn't you
should
get another
just
company? Right.
you should
There's
just
so
go
many
to the
options.
office.
Right. Right. And you chose not to. I don't want to hear any excuses. We're doing this as a privilege.
Hmm.
And one of the things for you working here is you are able to connect anytime we need you to. Now, of course, if the problem is on the company's issue about connectivity because their IT department is garbage, that's a whole different thing.
Hmm.
And they could tell you that. Say, look, we can't have people working from home because our IT department is in disarray. We need to
Hmm.
completely redo this, and we're going to lose a month of productivity. You stay at
Yeah,
home. We just
our servers
simply
can't keep up with it.
right. We just can't do it. That's a different thing. Tell them that. All you need to do is tell them that. But of course, that is not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is they simply want people at their desk, period, and they don't care why. And that
Well,
seems a bit unfair.
they bought that multi-billion-dollar building
Right.
you know, up in New York City, and they want
Hey,
people there.
you could sublease it, you could rent out offices, you could actually make more money and
Yeah,
make people happy if you take a little bit of enterprise and thought in the entire situation.
yeah.
So, or rent or have less offices for your overhead. You could save overhead in your budgeting there. There's all sorts of things you could do. That's being completely inflexible and forcing your way upon people who know better. And I think that's why a lot of white collar workers simply aren't tolerating because they're aware this can be done differently and you're simply being a jerk and you're being
Hmm.
unfair about it. And I'm not going to put up with it, especially if they have a job where they don't feel like they're doing anything of any real contribution to society or anybody else except you, who's a jerk, and they don't particularly care for it. So they're going to leave.
Right. Well, I feel like that was a good talk on that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I hope we're able to help some people out or at
Hmm.
least make people think. So, what's our next podcast about?
Romantic relationships.
Yeah, how we view romantic relationships. I am sure that the dating scene, I have a fiance now, but I was dating after your mother and I divorced many, many years ago for quite some time. And
Hmm.
I'm sure how I look at romantic relationships is entirely different than how you look at romantic relationships or how we treat them. But then again,
It's
we're both
still a male perspective.
right. It's a male perspective, and we're both hetero, so
Hmm.
we're gonna have similar views, I'm sure, in the
Yeah, the
whole thing.
generation difference is going to be quite significant still.
I think so. I think so. And how we get along with each other, how we approach each other, and our expectations of each other. I think the biggest difference is probably going to be the expectations of the women with us, perhaps, as
Okay.
opposed to, but that's as individual as it is generational. So I think
Hmm.
that's going to be a great podcast and a good talk for both of us because we really don't know what we're going to say to each other about this, but we're
Yeah.
going to go down there quite some time. So for our next podcast, please join us. I'm Boomer X,
And I'm Millennial Z.
and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for joining. Please watch us on YouTube and listen to us on all the podcast applications. We're on Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, uh,
Spotify.
Spotify, of course, Radio Public, Podcatcher now. That's the latest one. Uh,
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio. We're on a bunch of them, so please listen and go to our pod page, and you can see us there. Please subscribe. Take care,
Peace.
everybody.